just aren't there right now. The lament from one of the construction guys at the assembly last week was nobody wants to do the work. And again, we've got to reclaim the American work ethic, I think.
Well, with Kansas City, I even just saw on the news a few nights ago, where here and locally there are people who are having like a high school intern apprenticeship for welding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's focusing on the kids who really aren't going to go to university. And that's okay. Sometimes we have to admit that people are not born with the qualities or even the IQ level to go and be a brain surgeon or a international corporate defense attorney or something like that.
Correct.
We have to have, the higher, the lower, everybody involved here. Here in Kansas City, do you see people who are kind of bringing those opportunities as far as the more, if you will, blue-collar type of job? Because like we've clearly outlined already, there's plenty of high-income opportunities for more traditional blue-collar work.
Yeah. Don Greenwell with the Builders Association is leading some of that. They have the training center up on North Oak, North Kansas City, where it really is a series of different types of construction environments that these students are going through. You can go in there and you see kids laying brick.
Okay.
It's missing one of the components in there that allows it to solidify. So at the end of the day, they take the brick off, they scoop the stuff back into the bucket.
Okay.
And the next class comes in, the next day to practice. It's bricksmanship.
Okay.
Same thing with electronics, carpentry, finishing, rough end carpentry. All of these things are going on up at that center, and they have openings. They haven't been able to get enough people in there to come close to filling the need of contractors in this region for people who are going to stay with it and develop a career in the trades.
It seems. So there's clearly a need for skilled labor, and not necessarily low-paying wages, and like we mentioned, there's not necessarily a huge value placed on education, a good job, or any of that. We'll just, for simplicity, east of Troost, the more rundown parts of town. How do you connect that? How do you build that up? We need, like you said, we need people who genuinely care to band together and get in the communities and say, look, for an example, because I think I'm kind of wandering here. 50 Cent. Do you know 50 Cent, the rapper?
Yeah.
So I read his book. It's The 50th Law, which is written by him and a historian, Robert Greene. And it is an incredible book about the first half of it, or maybe the first third, is his life story. And his life story, his dad died. His dad wasn't even around. His dad was gone right when he was, a baby. His mom died at a very young age in, inner city violence. And he went to live with his family, dealing drugs as a kid, teenager, all that. And what he says in the book that really stuck with me is, and again, this is, I grew up in, suburban Lee Summit, so I wasn't really exposed to this. But he grew up in an area where, why even finish high school? The people that finished high school went to go work at the grocery store bagging groceries or the gas station or whatever. They didn't have anything great to build from. And so he's like, what the hell? Why would I even bother finishing high school? I've got nothing. Why waste my time? I'm just going to go straight to dealing drugs, make some serious money, look out for myself, get involved with a gang of people who can actually protect me, whether I want to be a part of it. Fortunately, we know how the story worked out. He was able to get out barely. I mean, he was about to have his first CD album released by Universal or one of those respected albums, but then he got shot in a rival gang thing. Someone was jealous, and they immediately cut the deal. So we went back to square one, living in the bad part of town, in the hospital, going through rehab, trying to get his motor functions back, and then eventually rose up again and got his label out. And we know the rest of the story. So I'm curious, from where you're standing, are there organizations here in town? I know there is a young guy who's got he's got kind of like a farm fishery on the east side of Troost, where he's bringing in young guys, coming in, learn how the fishery works, how the little gardening works, try to give them like some good, good influential mentoring. Do you see anything else like that right now in Kansas City that's helping this kind of crime situation, or
Well, I mean, there are a number of folks. There are things going on through churches. My Catholic parish in the Brookside area has been working for some years to create a stronger alliance with a primarily African American membership of the Catholic Church just east of Troost a little bit.
Okay.
The two parishes doing a lot more collaborations, a lot more of encouraging people from one congregation to go to service at the other church,
Okay.
and get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take thousands and thousands of those kinds of small organization and individual level interactions, to help, I guess, knock a hole in that wall of division that still exists. We got into this jam over the course of several decades.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get fixed over the course of the next one or two.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's going to be a long-term solution if there is one. Demographics are going to take care of some of that as the white population in the country becomes less dominant as a percentage of the overall. But the return to values, the embracing of standards again, is, I think, going to play a huge role in if we can make more young kids understand that you are better off. You will have a better life if you don't have a kid before you're 15. You will have a better life if you finish both high school and some post-secondary. You will have a better life if you get married and stay married. An excellent piece I saw on that just the other day, I think it was powerlineblog.com, that assessed and linked back to a deeper study about where the money is in America. And now the people in two-income households, with professional careers who are making combined six-figure salaries are being viewed as part of the problem because they are creating inequality with people who don't have that. But look what they had to go through to get where they are.
Yeah, right.
They finished school, they waited, they stayed married, and they had, didn't have kids until they were ready.
Until they could, yeah.
And it's just astonishing to me that now this is being held out as by some folks as part of the problem is these people are succeeding over there. Damn it, we can't have that. And in some ways, it's an assault on success. It's an assault on the benefits, the blessings of capitalism itself. And that's, for a guy who's, I'm a committed capitalist, but I'm also a guy who thinks that there's a problem when a CEO, 20 years ago was making 35 times the average average worker's salary, and today is making 250 times. There's something wrong there.
As a business guy, a business reporter, for lack of a better term, and you study, do you see any legitimate solutions to that? Because it's, I'm right there with you. Capitalism has most definitely pulled more people out of poverty than anything else in the world.
Correct.
But at the same time, human emotion, greed, envy, all that type of thing, can lead to, like you said, any actual way to combat that or kind of pull that back in?
A greater sense of corporate responsibility would be nice.
Right.
With the boards that are signing off on those kinds of compensation packages. I don't have any problem richly rewarding executives who have taken their companies and rewarded their stockholders with their performance.
Yeah.
My issue is that too many corporations today are arguing that we need to be paying this kind of a compensation package to attract this highest level.
Examples of folks here in Kansas City doing an awesome job of that?
Well, I mean, go back to the Dunns. I mentioned them a few minutes ago. They became an employee stock ownership plan company a few years ago. But before that, Terry, as CEO, third generation of what had been, a family-owned construction company in the 1920s, built this thing into a, $2.5 billion organization who said, as part of our primary mission, 10% of the profit right away goes to charitable causes.
Okay.
And that's our starting point.
Okay.
We'll build on our philanthropy from there. That value is still in place over there. We do something each year called Best Companies to Work For.
Yeah.
A number of those ESOPs have that same kind of philosophy built into them. Done set a standard, and others are living up to it, and that's terrific. It's taking capitalism to its highest and best use.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. There's certainly some ills with it, but I mean, other companies, I'd have to go back through. If you get online at ingrams.com and click through some of those features, you will see a number of them that we recognize. Corporate Champions, something we do in the philanthropy issue every December. We look at companies that have gone what we think above and beyond with their philanthropy. And that doesn't have to be 10% of the profits. It's, are you making an unusual commitment to the staff and talents of or the hours and talents of your staff, and letting them get out there and serve in nonprofit causes, not just yours as a corporation, but theirs.
Yeah.
Are you encouraging and promoting that kind of responsibility?
That's what I really appreciate about what Ingram's does. Is it's not just your normal, the ABC company had a 2.5 point increase in profit this month, and da da da. You guys do some really not just business reporting, but like you said, kind of the inside baseball of business around Kansas City. And every month is a different theme for the main issue, and you really kind of cycle through. You show you've got some roundtable discussions of different industries around. You've got some, like you said, the list of the most charitable or helping the people out type of companies around Kansas City. It's a very cool theme you stick with, rather than just reporting just the dry Wall Street Journal type of, not to say Wall Street Journal is boring, but the more boring type of reporting in Kansas City. So where do you see some really, clearly the airport's a huge thing everybody's talking about. I'm not really that interested in it, although it seems kind of weird. Actually, it seems very kind of strange that, who was it? Was it Burns and McDonald that was really pushing hard? And was it them that was buying radio ads and TV ads and all of that?
Right. Was
there something strange going on behind that? Because it seemed like they really, really wanted it. And now that they didn't get picked, they're like, fighting the contest or whatever. Like, what's up there?
Kansas City has, and I haven't traveled enough or lived long enough in other communities to know if the cynicism stripe in those other places is as thick as it is here. Mm-hmm. But, in chatting with a guy from an architectural firm, not Burns and Mac, who was, closely tied in with what's going on the airport discussions. His kid and mine are both in the same Cub Scout pack or Boy Scout troop. He had a very cynical take on it. He said, Burns and Mac got this whole thing going in May, because they were making a grab for the money. I do not see it that way. This issue has languished for years. Nobody has been able to crack the nut of getting past the public's favoritism for keeping the airport the way it is. And yet the business community has long said that airport is killing us on first impressions with trying to bring in talent that we desperately need here. The mayor asked Burns and Mac to get involved. Burns and Mac stepped up like a good corporate citizen, I thought, and came up with this innovative proposal that wouldn't have cost, that would have had private financing behind it.
Which is actually, considering where we are as a society right now, it seems like the government's always footing the bill for these gigantic projects. That was a pretty cool feature.
I thought it was wonderful corporate responsibility, civic responsibility that they exercised. And for them, I have to believe they put 7 figures into the whole effort to research and come up with a proposal and present it, and then to get kicked in the teeth the way they have been in the court of public opinion by the the search committee or the committee making a recommendation on a new developer for it. It was, to me, it was very unfortunate. They didn't deserve that for stepping forward the way they did. The whole issue for me kind of sidesteps a bigger issue of, wait a minute, they put the whole airport thing on hold a year ago because they couldn't get past the public's resistance to doing anything. And now, suddenly, because of that initial press conference in May with the mayor and Burns and Mac, it's, fait accompli that they're going to be doing something.
Right.
They do have to get past a November vote now. And it's, as they said at that assembly we had a week or two ago, businesses need to unite and make the case to the public about why it's in their interest, even if they don't fly once a year.
Fair enough.
Why it's in their interest to have a better airport, and why we need to take on that cost right now. And, it's not inconsequential for the city. We had 3 5-inch rains over the course of 30 days in July and August. And there are a lot of homeowners in town who are still wringing out carpet from their basement saying, wait a minute, this community's looking at $2.5 billion consent decree from the EPA to get its wastewater issues taken care of so that this won't be happening anymore.
Yeah.
How do we have money for the airport or a streetcar extension or hotel or whatever before we've taken care of that very fundamental need that I, as a voter, feel? Well, if you got a problem with voters like that, there's a big chunk of them that put you in the hole going into the polls. And they need to make the case to those people. Here's why taking care of this airport now is somehow connected to a resolution to that problem you're having in your basement.
Right. That's a good one. And that's like a stretch. You're really going to have to connect A to B there and get people to. Yeah. But
the amazing thing I've learned in 8 years of working in business journalism, and I didn't work in business journalism before I came to the magazine. What I've learned is everything is connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you say that. I just had a thought I was going to ask regarding like the streetcar and such. Are you familiar with the Show Me Institute?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They do some incredible think tank research projects. And, it's like maybe about once every month, once every 6 weeks or so, they have an event down there on Truce at their office, and I go to pretty regularly. They had one about 4 or 5 months ago about the TIF. I don't know if you want to call it abuse. You could call it abuse of the TIF program here in Kansas City. And I was blown away where the majority of all the development in the Power and Light downtown area is all TIF. Everything the streetcar touches is TIF. What was the other major project they just recently did that was TIF related? I think it was a renovation in the River Market they did was TIF. And basically what they presented at this meeting there at Show Me was that something like 75% of all of the new development in Kansas City that's having an economic positive impact is completely off limits for any type of tax revenue.
Yep. Yeah.
So not only are we like increasing the property values of the highest traffic, the most ripe for taxation, but then we're also like just saying, nope, give it away. We're not going to tax any of that. So we're like actually hurting ourselves. We're giving more maintenance to the city, more stuff the city needs to get involved with, but we're lowering the tax base. And then you bring up a good point. The water system in Kansas City is a huge problem. It's been a problem. It's not like it's any secret. Everybody's known about it for a long time. But we're lowering the amount of taxes the city's taking in whole and then giving it away on TIF projects when maybe they could be used in a better feature. I'm not going to try to be an armchair coach here and say where it would be better used or maybe not used at all. But are you familiar with how this TIF thing is working in Kansas City? Do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, I guess my take on it is that in theory that money will be coming back in as those breaks go away.
Right.
The question is whether the establishments got the breaks still be there to generate the revenues to be taxed.
Right.
When those things sunset.
And I think it's like 20 more years until they start sunsetting, and at that point it'll be perfect time to say, oh, you know what, we could really use another TIF program to get that renovated.
Well, I'm a big constitutionalist and was kind of appalled 20 years or so ago when the Supreme Court came in with a Kelo decision that allowed seizure of private property for development, and that offended me. I have a much harder time reconciling my own feelings about that when I look at what has happened over in Wyandotte County, with Village West. That was essentially the same thing. They condemned land. They took that land from property owners and built the Speedway. They built Village West. They used the Star bonds.
Right.
The county is far better off financially. They've been able to cut tax rates each of the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, something like that. They're still pretty heavily reliant on property tax in that county, but not as much as they would have been without the benefits. They got the Star bonds have been paid off, and now it's just in a position where that is a big cash generator for Wyandotte County. How do you say, no, the poorest county in the state should not be enjoying that kind of economic benefit because it was wrong to grab the land that way? I mean, to me, that's something you address up front by saying, we're not just going to take your land. We're not going to give you market value for it. We're going to make you a percentage owner of the new development that's going in here.
You think that would be the more
and your
appropriate
family's
way
going
to
to reap that benefit
Yeah.
in perpetuity.
Okay.
I think that's much fairer than saying, here's what the market value of your place is now.
Get out.
And get out.
Is that
and
kind
by
of-
the way, it's going to be 10 times this.
Is that kind of how 71 Highway was built? Because I know that they destroyed a lot of neighborhood homes when they built 71 Highway. Is that kind of the same thing they did? Just say, oh, this is ours. Here's your money. Get out.
Yeah, well, and there wasn't any real economic development that was underlying it. It wasn't going to be for tax generation. It was
Right.
cutting a 3-block swath through the heart of the black neighborhoods in Kansas City, from Truman Hospital down to 95th Street.
Yeah.
There was a lot, a great sense that it was being done, in order to further isolate that community, and they Mamie Hughes, the community activist, who dug in her heels and said, "We want stoplights and crossings at these intersections. You see them now at 55th Street and 63rd Street." That's we had an event down in Joplin a year after the tornado where we took some of our 50 Missourians you should know down there to commemorate that. She was one of them from that first year. And we came back very late at night trying to get back into Kansas City at a reasonable hour. Must have been 1 o'clock in the morning when we hit the red light in the bus on
those
55th Street.
damn
Mamie
red
was in the
lights.
bus, and I just hollered, "Thanks, Mamie."
You know what, though? You got to have fun. You got to have fun because I get where she was coming from. Put the stoplight so more people will stop in this part of town and so on and so forth. Really, I don't think it's panned out, but regardless, yeah, you gotta give her some crap sometimes because it's annoying when you're just trying to there's no traffic, you're just trying to get to wherever, and it's like these damn stoplights on a highway, a city highway or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Does she still stand behind it? She still think it was?
Oh, sure. Well,
okay.
I mean, for Mamie and other folks in that part of town, it was about access. Mm-hmm. You're not just walling us in; you're taking away our access to the plaza or to the neighborhoods to the west. Very valid point. Mm-hmm. I don't know why the thing couldn't have been built. Well, it would have been astronomical in cost, I suppose, to elevate it.
Yeah, of course.
So that they could have retained their street grid. But
yeah. Well, so what's coming up in Kansas City? What do you see? What are some projects you see coming down the pipeline that not that many? Everybody's talking about the airport, like we mentioned. Anything people aren't talking about that's coming down the pipeline right now? You're kind of interested in?
I'm going to be really excited to track what goes on with Amazon's HQ2 proposal for another headquarters. In some ways, Kansas City is uniquely positioned to make a pitch there. In others, it's we're hurting a little bit. We do some coverage of the transportation logistics sector, where a guy gave me a pretty good tour of how the strategic, the underlying strategy falls for a company that's distributing nationally in America. If you've got one distribution hub to serve the country, Kansas City's your spot.
Yeah, right. It's
if you've got
right
3, Kansas City has to be 1. If you got 5, Kansas City. It's that second one. If you're on the West Coast, is Kansas City east enough? If you're on the East Coast, are we west enough?
Right.
But you look at some of the elements in the company's RFP, their request for proposals, what they were looking for. We get hurt a little bit by not having immediate metro-wide access to a public transportation system.
Okay.
But we get much high marks for having 45-minute drive access to an international airport.
Yeah.
We get low marks for the fact that the international airport serves Canada and Mexico.
Yeah, like Cancun.
Whereas Amazon's looking for the ability to put people on planes to London and Paris and Hong Kong.
Well, man, Amazon's buying their own 747s. I think regardless, they're buying their own airplanes. So they're probably, whatever city they go to, going to have their own little hub there.
That's true. We've got lots and lots of land at a greatly discounted rate compared to other metro areas. 50,000 workers is a lot.
That's going to put
to absorb
so many people to work.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I'm sure a lot would draw a lot of people here.
Yeah.
But it as they said at that assembly, it is a once in a generation opportunity, and I think what happens there is going to be real interesting as it plays out. We've got not quite as big a deal, but almost as much economic value in the project with what Cerner's doing down there, off on the old Marion Labs campus.
Right. They're off Bannister, right?
Yeah, $4.4 billion project. They're going to have 15,000 employees filling that thing when it's done over the course of the next 7 or 8 years. And that's just huge. The spinoff business that's going to generate. I've heard it said that one of the knocks against Kansas City as a tech center was, okay, fine, I come there and go to work for Cerner without any problem. What happens if I decide that isn't going to pan out for me? What other tech
opportunities
can I take?
Yeah.
But those are popping up all over the place, and that's really encouraging.
Well, let me pause there, because you had mentioned that Amazon coming to Kansas City, they're going to need a place to set up shop, a buildings to work in, obviously. Now, this was probably 5 years ago that I remember this conversation. There was a lot of drama about downtown Kansas City proper, for that matter, having like a 2/3, something like 65% vacancy rate in the business area. Do you know, is it still that bad?
Oh, no, it's not nearly. I mean, in terms of office space?
No, not office space available, but not office space set up, but actual, like, hey, I've got an open office. Do you want to lease this place? Like, empty office space. It was something like 2/3 of all the office space zoned in Kansas City proper was sitting vacant. And that was about, because I remember hearing, it was back when, what's his name, with Scott Parks and the other, who's the guy that's got Ruckus now?
Not sure.
Shannon and
Mike
Parks?
Shannon?
Mike Shannon. Shannon and Parks were together. And they were talking about this situation. So I guess, has it improved? Is it feasible that if Amazon were to choose Kansas City, they wouldn't necessarily have to go way out to the suburbs or the farmland and build up, that they could actually take property in Kansas City proper and build up in the city?
Well, Kansas City proper touches 4 counties, the city limits. So, if you're looking at the Northland, there's lots of land up there. If you're looking at eastern Jackson County, there are possibilities there. But within the city of Kansas City itself, closer to the urban core, I don't know where you're going to find 300 acres. And that's a starting point.
So is that what they're quoting? 300?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, okay, then I didn't realize that. That is not easy.
Yeah. I don't know how many points within the city, as you get closer to the business district, can accommodate, 50,000 additional workers, even if only half of those. I mean, if half were using public transit to get to work, that's fine, but still another 25,000 commuters would be a significant pop for a corner of the metro area like that.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't see how it couldn't go anywhere but to the 435 fringes.
Okay. Do you have any insight as to what type of proposal the city's going to put together for this?
I don't know. My first reaction was, wow, this is a great opportunity to exercise some of that municipal collaboration we've heard civic leaders talking about the need for Kansas and Missouri to say, we're going to ignore that state line, we're going to work together.
Yeah.
But right out of the gun, we heard about cities in Kansas that were putting together theirs, and Kansas City was going to start putting it together. I haven't seen any news coverage that said, here, we're going to do kind of the same kind of strategic alliance that got Google to wire up both KCK and KCMO. KCK won that initially.
That's
but it was about a week or two later where they said, you know what? We've got these two urban areas that are absolutely connected, mirroring each other, and it needs to be a kind of more of a metro-wide in its focus. That was a great example of it working. I don't know. There's, I just can't imagine any community besides Kansas City proper having the resources to be able to make an effective appeal to Amazon and say, here, we're where you ought to be. Olathe, Overland Park, potentially.
God, imagine, if you think the rush hour traffic is bad right now between Kansas and Missouri there on 435. Oh my God, adding 50,000 more jobs, it's going to get so much worse. But, they'll have to plan for that. Like you said, the public transit's going to have to, I don't know, they'll have to figure that proposal in somehow.
Well, I mean, if I'm at Amazon, this is where I'm going to get innovative and say, I'm not just throwing up an office space for 50,000 people. We're doing the residential development on that site too.
That'd be pretty incredible. You know what's really incredible at Amazon is that they are not just like online shopping. One of my best friends, absolute closest buddies, he works in development up in Seattle for Amazon. I was just up there in a few months ago, back in December, I think it was. I was blown away at the amount of just experimental stuff Amazon does in the city. They've got all sorts of stuff that's not online shopping related that they just experiment in Seattle to see if it picks up and see if it works out. The trickle down, for lack of a better term, the trickle down business that Amazon will bring that's not just HQ and building buildings is going to be huge. So they very well may just say, you know what, this is a battle we'll fight. We'll see if we can't, do a little experiment for housing or transport or whatever here. You have no clue. That's the kind of company they are. They're willing to take those kind of huge risks.
And we talked, a few minutes ago about everything being connected. This is where issues of workforce, the size of it, the workforce skills and training, the ability to get people, especially if this thing is built, or if we were to win it somehow and it was built out on the fringe, how do you get the people who most need the work out there?
Good question.
I've heard that raised at the same kind of economic assemblies we've done in other venues, where Greg Kendall over at the Wyandotte County, their economic development arm, will say, I've got people now who would be terrific candidates for those warehousing jobs, out at Logistics Park, Kansas City, or Centerpoint in South Kansas City. But I can't put them on a bus for 30 minutes. How and they don't have cars. How do we connect the workforce to where the jobs are?
Call Clay Chastain. That's like sin in Kansas City. He's got an idea, but nobody wants it. Is there any legitimate idea on how to connect that? That's not light rail.
Even light rail system wouldn't get it done. Kansas City developed the way it did, and New York developed the way it did.
Yeah.
For very distinct reasons. A lot of people said, over the course of their lives, I've seen New York. I don't want to live there. We've got the most interstate lane miles of any city in the country.
I didn't know that.
That's why rush hour here is really about 15 or 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah, it's not so bad at all.
Yeah, it's survivable. I got 3 younger kids I took on vacation this year to Washington, New York, and made the kind of eastern city loop. But as part of that, we got on the endpoint commuter rails into both Washington and New York and rode them in for an hour and a half on separate days. And I made a point of telling the kids, watch their faces. Look at the faces of these people who are getting on the train at 6:45 in the morning and then coming back at 5:30 at night for another hour and a half ride or 2 hours, out to their homes. Getting home and finding out, okay, we got to have dinner on, we got to get homework done, we got to get the kids in bed, and turn around 8 hours later and be getting back on the train. And there were not a lot of smiles on the faces of people in those cars.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And that's one of the awesome things about Kansas City is truly you're never more the furthest. I mean, aside from the airport, you're never more than like a 10 to 15 minute drive away from anything.
Yeah, it is incredibly convenient. It's a big sprawling area. Not many people have reason to go from Olathe to Liberty, which is a 45-minute drive.
Right.
But the center point of that is downtown. You are literally 20 minutes away from, one of the cultural and economic centers of the metro area. And the affordability here, low cost of living, the ability to tap into a lot of higher education, a lot of post-secondary training that you need, and the amenities here, my God, in terms of art, the sports teams, and access to parkland and trails. Gosh, it's really tough to beat life here. And we talk with a lot of CEOs who came here from other places who say, I had no idea. And no, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I made my choice.
The people are pretty friendly as well. That's a bonus.
Oh,
culturally,
yes,
very friendly.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I didn't know that. I wanted to ask you sometime, and I'll just do it now. Your last article you wrote in the last month's issue, you were talking about how much economic impact the Kansas, Missouri has from all of the military bases here.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Will you just like dish on that for a while? I was blown away. I had no clue. I know Whiteman. Everybody knows Whiteman, the B-2 bombers. But like, will you kind of go into depth about what you were writing about in that article? Because like I said, I was really just like, whoa, I had no clue how much economic impact in this area there is just from military bases spread around Missouri and Kansas.
Yeah. Well, one of the, I guess, downsides of living in an area that's this sprawling is, unless you have a specific reason to be going from Olathe to Liberty,
Yeah.
occasionally, you don't really appreciate the different lifestyles that exist within this metro area. We're not all one Kansas City. No offense to the KCADC, because that's their slogan. Because living in the Northland is a different experience from living in Lee Summit, which is different from Western Shawnee.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool that there's that diversity of lifestyle options that are out there. So a lot of people don't recognize that just on the other side of Kansas City, Kansas, and its northern border, is that whole Lansing and Leavenworth corridor,
Mm-hmm.
which leads you up into the fort. I did not know until a couple of years ago, we had a military-only assembly where they were talking about how do we get, in the big downsizing of the military after Afghanistan, how do we take advantage of all that organizational talent coming out of the ranks of those guys at captain and major, colonel, who effectively have been running companies, with valuations of, $50 and $100 million.
Yeah.
The logistics, behind those. And tap into that talent base. But Fort Leavenworth I think it accounts for something like 20% of the traffic at KCI. I was astonished to hear that how much they were tied in. KCI's fate was tied into what's happening at the fort.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because that Command and General Staff College is bringing in people from all over the world, the military leaders, the next military leadership. And we touched on it briefly in that article. They said these are guys who go back to their countries, and they talk about their life experience in the United States, and it's a Kansas City experience, which is good. I mean, those guys move on to senior military positions. They cement that relationship with the fort. They send more of their people over here. It pays off in terms of diplomacy to have people with connections in seats of power at those other governments. So that's a really cool, side benefit of having 7,000 or 8,000 people on the payroll up at the fort. About 2/3 of those are career military, but the others are civilian employees and contractors. There are not many companies in town employing 7,000 people.
Right.
Fort Riley, just an enormous presence out in north central Kansas, just the other side of Manhattan, between there and Junction City. Even bigger, even more personnel. A huge economic driver for them, just as McConnell is down at Wichita. I worked at the paper there for 14 years, and McConnell played a significant role down there as well. So, yeah, it's our fate is directly tied in a lot of ways regionally to what happens with that Pentagon budget every year.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Pentagon and DOD, they're sending a lot of money to those bases.
Right.
And like you said, they just hire more people when they need it. And
absolutely. And a lot of smaller businesses then that are vendors to the forts that make their living on the fact the fort is based here. So.
What about Warrensburg, the Whiteman Air Force? What type, aside from, really all I think most of us know is the bombers. What else, what other type of economic are they bringing into the area?
Well, I mean, Warrensburg being a college town too, I think the folks at Whiteman have been able to leverage some of the educational assets there with classes for folks on the base. But you just can't overstate how important that is for a community it's outside of that comfortable commuting range. Most people don't want to be driving an hour and a half in, hour and a half out to their jobs. Right. So Warrensburg is a bit of an outlier that way. But to have an economic engine like that right at their doorstep, I mean, they are truly blessed there with both that and a state university.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me think here. What are some of the other, because every issue you have your own articles you're writing. What are some of the other articles you've written in the past, say, year, 2 years that you're really proud of? Because like I said, that one really shocked me. Not like, oh my God, I can't believe it, but just like, wow, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that was a really good article. What are some of the other articles you've written in the past, say, year, 2 years that you're really proud of that, was pretty surprising with what type of data you've uncovered or reported on?
Well, our September issue
coming
out today.
One? Okay.
Late, but we hope good. is the second installment of something we call the Ingram's 250.
Okay.
250, those most influential leaders. The key to making that work for us was not just identifying what we thought were the right people, but getting the right bio and profile. And what we did was, within each one of those, there's a short descriptor of who they are, why their position and their role is a significant contributor to the regional economy. Then after that, we had some bullet points that were highly personal. You know, it's like, what are your thoughts about emerging business trends? What's going to change business in this country the next 10 years? Scariest moment, either in business or, you know, outside the office. What was it, and what did you learn from it? What is your best advice to a starry-eyed entrepreneur who wants to go out there and set the world on fire? Some of these stories, you know, and then there's some little more trivial stuff like, what was your first car?
Sure.
You know, what's number one on your bucket list? You know, the responses we got, and we got about an 80%, I think, response rate from folks. You know, number of businessmen just, I don't know, it's too personal. Go ahead, I'm honored to be included, but please don't make me don't make me do that. Just write about the company. But the insights that people are going to get from that edition, and it's going to take hours to get through it because there's 6 to a page.
So all 250 are in this issue. Okay.
Yeah, and it's you know, some of the insights are just terrific. It is a self-help book for the business owner.
Okay.
With some of the guidance that they give in there. It is a personal self-reflections help book with some of the stories you hear about overcoming, you know, medical challenges within the family or personally, or, you know, having survived, you know, a snowmobile crash in the mountains, being stranded, or being run down by a charging bull elephant in must. You know, the stories are incredible. I mean, they really are terrific. I mean, even something as innocuous you would think is, hey, what was your first car? People would talk about you know, the $200 that they had to scrape together to get that car, and, you know, where they are in life now, you know, and yet it still resonates with them what it took to get that first vehicle. There's some great stuff in there. We're really, you know, I'm really proud to have been a part of that project.
How did you come up with the idea for that?
Because Joe Sweeney, our publisher, broached it early 2016 because some financially or organizationally, but related type publications in Los Angeles and Dallas had done the LA 500 and the Dallas 500. Well, you know, this community could never substantiate that kind of recognition for that many people, but we thought, you know, if we stretch, we may be able to get to 250. And, you know, it was a great exercise in understanding, really doing some research and figuring out, you know, companies that are kind of off our radar for the coverage we do outside those traditional sectors that we cover. Right. There are a lot of really big players out there who are able, you know, from the fact that they employ 400 or 500 or 1,000 people to bend policy in their areas, you know, to accommodate the needs of that company and the benefits that having those people employed and living in those communities returns to the overall region.
So are these 250 all 250 that people can find around the metro area?
We go as far west as Topeka.
Okay.
We got a couple, I think, from maybe the St. Joe area.
Okay, yeah.
Not too far east from there. I don't know if it's anybody from Warrensburg or not. But,
okay. And so, okay, you're doing the 250. How do you narrow that down? That's or how do you come up with, like, damn, we're at 120. We need another 130 people.
Yeah, the first 150 were a snap.
Okay.
You know, the second 50, you know, there were a lot, and it's done by a selection committee. Okay? It'd be a lot easier if I were king of the world and could just say, here's my list. But there has to be a unanimous agreement that these are the people we believe as a team fit that profile. It's the last 50 that are kind of tough. You see a lot of emerging up-and-comers, but they're just not there yet.
Yeah.
You know, there aren't many Terry Dunns and Steve Dunns to go around.
Yeah, of course.
But there aren't, you know, it's going to be interesting as the whole boomer generation fades out and you see these companies transitioning in their leadership to see who steps up and takes on those kinds of roles, both as successful business executives and civic anchors. You know, people who are really making life here in the community better.
So I'm curious, how many people say, young folks, I don't know, early 30s and younger, how many how many would you say make up that 250? And did you find any young people here in Kansas City that you were just like, wow, that's a really cool thing that guy or girl is doing? Or do we need to wait until the issue comes out?
we were waiting to get put on the spot, and you just delivered. I don't know that we have anybody under 30 in there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
And again, this is about power and influence, and that tends to be something that's accumulated over the course of several decades in business.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have a Mark Zuckerberg here in Kansas City yet.
Yeah, right. We try to cap it on the high end of the age range by saying we want people who are still active. We don't want to lard this thing up with people who have clearly demonstrated their ability to get things done, but are 75, 80 years old or older. Mm-hmm. We don't mean any lack of respect for the Don Halls and the Henry Blocks of the world.
Absolutely.
But they didn't make it in the first year.
Okay.
They making a huge impact still on the community through their philanthropy and what they're doing, post-career. But these are the players who are engaged day to day with companies now. And yeah, we heard it. We knew we were going to hear it. It's too old. It's too male. It's too white.
Okay.
And you know what? To which we say, tell us where we're wrong. Tell us who we're missing.
Yeah.
We got 3 recommendations last year from people when we turned it around and said, who are we missing?
Oh, okay. So you're saying that you did it last year. People may or may not have given you flack, but you said, okay, we're going to open it up, give us input, and you only got 3 submissions.
Well, from the people who were giving us the flack, we said,
right,
tell us where we're wrong. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, it's too old, it's too white, it's too male.
Yeah.
But when you say, okay, who else is at that standard? Who have we overlooked?
Mm-hmm. That can be really frustrating. You guys put blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and like Ingram's is not just like some dopey magazine put on by, a bunch of roughnecks that got together. You guys put a really awesome magazine out each month, and there's always going to be critics.
Well, yeah, I guess. But the whole point that drives all of those business recognition awards, and there's one in each month. We've got more than a dozen different programs for that. It all comes back to recognizing excellence. And we think that there is a social and commercial value created by people who excel at what they do. Clearly, the community is better off from all the foundations that have been created by the guys who have made hundreds of millions or billions of dollars and built their companies up to that kind of stature. Mm-hmm. We would like to see a hell of a lot more of that.
Yeah.
We want to have more candidates.
What about the, speaking of wanting to have more candidates, what about like the entrepreneur startup scene in Kansas City? I don't see that as a subject so often in the magazine.
We try to return to, issues of innovation once or twice a year.
Okay.
One of the big opportunities for that is in July when we do the annual Corporate Report 100 fastest growth companies.
Right, yes.
Those tend to be innovators. Those tend to be smaller.
Yes.
And they tend to be those, what the Kaufman calls the gazelles,
mm-hmm.
Who are hiring fast. There's a lot of literature on both sides about whether small business really is the driver of hiring in this country that it claims to be. But I think there's a lot more evidence that it is
mm-hmm.
than that it isn't. So you have to me as a capitalist, you have to value churn. You have to value the fact that companies are going to be born, they're going to grow rapidly, and they're going to fade
mm-hmm.
as other innovations come along and replace them. What Charles Koch called creative destruction. The number of classical French economists who talked about the value of that as well. It's like you get into problems as an economy, as a set of public policy makers who are trying to promote economic growth when you say, we've got to hold on to what we got.
Mm-hmm.
We can't let these banks fail. We can't let the auto sector go under.
Yeah.
Even though they have made decisions that demand
they
that
knew
they go under.
They knew they were taking the risk when they made those decisions. Right.
Yeah.
Are there any spectacular failures of businesses in Kansas City that are just a good old reminisce story? I'm trying to think. any like one that comes to mind that my friends in the cryptocurrency world we always laugh about is Butterfly Labs. Were you familiar with them at all?
I think I've heard the name.
It was a hilarious. I mean, looking back, it's hilarious, right? At the moment, it wasn't. They were so in the world of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and such. In order to create one, you have to mine it, and the way you mine a new coin is by using your computer, and you use the hardware that's in your computer to do really complex math problems, and it's like, cryptography, solving the puzzle. Butterfly Labs was based here in Kansas City, and they were one of those that, had they not been found out by the government they were a fraud and immediately shut down and thrown in jail and such and fined, they would have probably made Ingram's Magazine as one of the fastest growing. They were selling the hardware for people to upgrade all of their computers and servers and such to have more power to mine more coins and such, but they weren't sending anything out. They were collecting all the orders, taking all the money in. They may have sent out a few pieces, but they kept saying, "Oh, we're totally backed up. Oh, we're just overwhelmed with demand." And they had a great marketing scheme, and they just had a flood of money coming in because of how quickly the price was rising. People were just putting orders in. Here's my money. Here's my money. Here's my money. And they didn't send anything out. The feds got involved. They got shut down. They went to, all the stuff that happens when you're defrauding customers and stuff. They got huge fines, all that kind of stuff.
Well, somewhere there's a Nigerian prince going, "Damn, why didn't I think of that?"
You know what? They're not so far off. This world, I'm telling you right now, Dennis, it is still the Wild West. There are so many. I actually just, you would think that in the year 2017, we would be able to spot a Ponzi scheme, right? If it smells like it, if it smells, walks, talks like it, it is. I had a guy a week and a half, 2 weeks ago at a meeting I was at saying, "You guys, I got this really great opportunity. I want to let you guys know about it, before this meeting gets started." I was like, "Yeah, and the meeting was all themed around, Bitcoin. We were just talking about general general market and all that." And he was saying, "Well, there's this guy. He's from India.
Yeah.
And he started this charity. And the charity is, you spend $35 and then you get 30% of that goes to the charity. The other 20% goes to you and the person that would brought you in, like me, and we get to share that." And I'm like, I'm almost quoting here, Dennis. He's saying, "And then you get like 3 friends, and then they buy $35 worth of Bitcoin and send it to his charity, and then 30% of that goes to the charity, and then that 20% goes to you and me." And like, literally, he was describing a pyramid scheme. The guy's trying to build the first $1 billion a charity, and I didn't know him well enough, but you don't want to be like that asshole who's just like, "Dude, clearly that's a pyramid scheme." But then, there's no shortage of Nigerian princes out there.
Yeah. To me, the most remarkable rise and I can't necessarily call it a fall, but death of a company was Silpata.
I don't know about them. What were they doing?
Jewelers. The 2 gals from Overland Park who borrowed $25 each from their grocery money back in the late 90s, maybe it was 80s, and created this Tupperware type club network with silver jewelry sales. Took it national. Thousands and thousands of women across the country were selling jewelry through these home-based parties. 2010 or 11, maybe a little after that, Avon bought it, $650 million. And it's become a big source of philanthropy for the 2 families that reaped that money. Several years later, Avon sold it back to them for 60 or 80 million. And then last year or earlier this year, they simply said the model's not working and shut it down.
No kidding.
And it's like, wow. it was really a cookie jar to billionaire status story, and to see it all just go away that quickly, I just found remarkable. But
the free market is a fickle monster.
It is, and I'm not sure what changed the model underneath them. I never really saw a good post-mortem on the Silpata story, but the fact that they were able to sell it and capture that wealth and then bring it back under their control and send it out to pasture the way they did on their terms.
Wow.
Was kind of impressive.
Yeah. How about the what's his? I couldn't tell you his name. The guy who sold his software company for about 125 million, and then he's just taking it and he's like, "Hey, I've made it. I'm gonna have fun now." And he started the National Wrestling League here in Kansas City.
I don't know that one.
Oh yeah. He sold a gosh, I wish I could Google it right now, but I'm not going to. Folks, if they really want to, can Google it. A guy here in Kansas City. He built up a software company over the years. He's maybe in his like late 30s. He's not that old. He's
We may get a younger person in the Ingram's 250 next year.
Yeah. He definitely, and it's called. He sold it and started this up maybe 2 years ago, called the National Wrestling with an apostrophe.
Oh, God.
The National Wrestling League. You can see it's on the local channels. They go between Kansas City, St. Joe, like Lawrence, Columbia, St. Louis. It's very regional. And he's trying to build another wrestling franchise. And he's got it's hilarious. Actually, you watch the episodes, there's not more than like 50, 70 people out in the crowds. But it's hilarious because you can make your own signs. People are there. The storyline is just like WWF. It's just as silly and just like as much goofy fun watching it. So...
Well, he's a true visionary. I mean, who would have really gotten behind the regional wrestling club? If he wants to go national and can make it happen, that'll be a fun story to track.
Yeah, that's one that might make your magazine soon. Who the hell knows? It could happen. So let's see here. We've been going for about an hour, a little over an hour. Let's ask a few more things. We'll kind of wind this down.
Okay.
I am curious. Where do you get a lot of you're doing research and writing all the time. What outlets are you reading aside from just Ingram's that's giving you a lot of insight to whatever?
Well, believe it or not, one of my must-visit sites every day is the Drudge Report.
Okay.
People hate the Drudge Report from the left because they think it's that it's putting out all these stories that are just not true or they're hurting the cause. It's a headline aggregator is all it is.
It's one of the most simple, incredible businesses I've ever seen.
It's just pointing you to both the offbeat and the substantial.
Mm-hmm.
With stories that are developing out of Washington or once a month or so, there's a Kansas City story that makes it on there.
Yeah. I've seen Casey Starr linked on there.
So, I am a big time fan of PowerlineBlog.com.
Mm-hmm.
Got onto them during the run up to the 2004 election because they were connected to a source who was able to, within hours, to call bullshit on the whole Bush memos, National Guard memos thing.
What was that?
CBS had done a report that said George W. Bush had somehow gone AWOL.
Oh, right. Like he avoided the National Guard service.
Time in the Air Guard,
mm-hmm.
Had just walked away and was never held to account for it. Well, they came with memos that were purportedly issued at the time, which somebody had, like I said, within hours, had demonstrated they were the default settings for Microsoft Word. I mean, even the default font, point size, leading, width of the page. If you somebody had created, I'll never forget the GIF or GIF, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Whatever they call, but it was a flashing. Here's the document CBS used. Here's the same verbiage, from Microsoft Word, superimposed them on each other, had it flashing, and it was down to the periods and the commas were all hitting there. It was just devastating. That's what cost Dan Rather his career with CBS.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah, because they dug in their heels and said, this is, his great line was, well, maybe they're fake, but it's accurate. The underlying story is still the same.
Okay.
And he went from news icon to buffoon, in a matter of, a few months. But yeah, that site is, 3 lawyers from Dartmouth. I think a couple of them are retired now, but they founded that, and it is a great aggregator of public policy.
And what was the website one more time?
PowerlineBlog.
PowerlineBlog.com. Okay.
They have headlines, from other interesting pieces, and it deals with a lot of the issues that we talked about here. Social justice. What is a valid social justice complaint? What's bullshit?
Yeah.
In today's world, which can account for a lot of reading right there with the links. They're heavy into Obamacare coverage and analysis,
okay,
which I like to check out because we come back to healthcare and insurance quite a bit. Fiscal policy and things like that make other people's eyes roll. They do a great job, I think, of explaining that in terms that the average reader can understand. There are a couple of other sites locally. Check out the newspapers to see what they've got. It's not much anymore.
You ever follow Tony's Kansas City?
Yeah, I see it occasionally. He's got some good sources within City Hall that will dump stuff there that nobody else is picking up.
Yeah, he's a super controversial guy.
Yeah,
but you're right. Sometimes he's got some home runs on the sources he's got.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally it's kind of the blind hog theory, finding an acorn every once in a while.
Right. Yeah.
But there's just so much other stuff that you got to wade through to get to those that I think you could do everybody a service by focusing more on policy and less on Jordan Carver.
Yeah, for people who don't get that, Jordan Carver is like a bikini model, and the thing about Tony is almost every article, the headline, like the feature image of almost every article is a bikini model, and it's Jordan Carver quite often.
Yeah.
And she's got a lot to show off. So yeah, you can Google that. But yeah, that's and again, that's why he's so controversial. He doesn't give a damn.
No, he doesn't. And and the problem with some sites like that is that you got to have a framework, for building your content around.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a value system, and if your value system is everything sucks, well, that's not sustainable. I've said about similar sites that if that guy has as much as a DUI in his background, that's at least one conviction. Because it's easy to go out there and throw crap on everything, but to do something that's really gonna help foster the public discussion and debate and get into the minds of policymakers, that takes a little more than just having stuff handed to you.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think the last thing I can think of is the way you and I got introduced is Ingram's every month. You've got and what are is it 3 or 4 or 5 topics where you'll let people write articles and send them in? What are those? What are those topics?
Of Counsel, which deals with business law. Small Business Advisor, which is largely around operations and staffing and things like that. Financial Advisor, which we try to direct toward business finance, and then Wealth Management, because so many of our readers have substantial assets,
right?
That they are investing. Those are the 4 anchors. We'll add a tech advisor occasionally when it warrants, or a sales advisor. If there's something that calls for that, comes over the transom. But we try to recruit authors from reputable organizations with respected viewpoints, and give them a chance to just talk to our readership with a page of content. We generally defer to their judgment on what's a hot issue right now that might have some currency for our readership, and let them go. And their only constraint really is, that page ends after about 750 words. So.
Right. And that's how you and I got introduced. Is I'd written an article and mailed it over to you, and you thought it was good enough. You published it, and I was really proud of that. In fact, I've got the articles, the magazine issue right over there in that little box back behind you. So other folks who are out there who maybe busting their butt in the world of law or business development or finance or any of that, what's really cool about Ingram's is you guys allow just a common man, as long as you really have an awesome, like you said, point of view or story to tell or information to share, and you can fit it in under 700 words, you guys will publish that.
Yeah, well, mostly that's correct. They're not too common.
Yes, fair enough. That's
they
it.
tend
That's
to be the
caveat.
folks who are highly regarded within their professions, and have demonstrated measure success in what they do. But yeah, we want them. We want within each one of those commentaries for any reader to find the value that at least matches the subscription price.
Absolutely.
And if they can find it in all 4 of them, then they've covered 4 months worth with just that outlay for that issue.
Yeah. So anybody listening, if you've really got something that's just a grand slam, and you know it, and you've put it in front of a few people, and that was the other thing. I didn't want to just send you something. I had one of my good buddies is an editor of a newspaper on East, and I sent it back and forth to him a couple of times, and he made sure, he's like, okay, this is appropriate now. Go see if they'll take it. And so, the rest was history. But yeah, if there are folks out there that have that skill or quality, they should totally get in touch with you, because it's a great way to give back and keep involved in that whole community circle thing. So, I think that's about it for today.
All right.
Let's wrap it up. We'll turn it off. We should definitely do this again sometime in the future. I think this is an awesome way for people in the city to really, get a better feel of a little more human touch of what's going on with Ingram's magazine. So, we'll see if we can't do it in the future. But yeah, that's all I got for you right now, Dennis. Thanks a ton for coming, people. Thanks for watching. If people want to get a hold of you, or even Ingram's, the website is just ingrams.com.
Correct.
You're on Facebook. You've got your website. The magazine you can find all over the city. It's like everywhere.
Well, I mean, we hope so.
Yeah, right. I say, at least the places I go, I keep seeing it everywhere. Clearly, you can find it at the local libraries and bookstores and such. So, yeah, folks, check it out. It's a great publication. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it off right now. And Dennis, thanks a ton for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.